On January 26, 1966, the three Beaumont children, Jane, 9, Arna, 7, and Grant, 4, disappeared from a beach near their home in Adelaide, Australia. They were never found, and this incident became one of the most notorious missing person cases worldwide. Eventually, certain events not only affect society, but also manage to change it significantly. Whether on a smaller or larger scale, the impact of their consequences is felt by everyone. For example, many of us vividly remember September 11, 2001, an event that undeniably reshaped the world. At that time, panic and fear spread widely, with the worry of a possible repeat haunting millions. Similarly, the story I will share today not only affected a country and certain aspects of its culture, but perhaps influenced the entire world. In 1966, the Beaumont family led a peaceful and idyllic life. Jean, the father, worked as a linen goods salesman, traveling around the area to serve his clients, while Nance, the mother, was a devoted homemaker caring for their three children. They had been settled in Adelaide for quite some time, having chosen this city to raise their family. Their firstborn, Jane, was born in September 1956. 2 years later, in 1958, came Arna, the second daughter, and in July 1961, Grant, the youngest, was born. The family lived in a modest house at 109 Harding Street in the suburb of Somerton, a place also known for the mysterious case of a man found in 1948, the so-called Tamam Shud case, a puzzle for another time. The Beaumonts were living a dream, residing near a beach known for its tranquility and absence of problems like theft or accidents. The children, Jane, Arna, and Grant, had gained some independence, and their parents trusted the oldest daughter, 9-year-old Jane, to supervise her younger siblings during frequent beach visits. These trips were simple. They would take a bus to the beach and return before lunch, without any worries. During summer, with temperatures reaching up to 104 degrees Fahrenheit, 40 degrees Celsius, it became common for the children to go to the beach almost daily. Naturally shy, the kids found in the beach an opportunity to socialize outside school, which their parents encouraged. In a casual conversation, Arna mentioned they went to the beach because Jane had a boyfriend there. Nance was not alarmed by the comment, considering it just a childish invention from her 7-year-old daughter. On January 25th, Jean decided to accompany the children on one of these beach visits, as he was leaving for a work trip that would last a week. Before leaving, he spent time with the kids, and when saying goodbye, 4-year-old Grant told him, "Don't worry, Daddy, we'll be fine." Jean kissed his children and left, never imagining that this would be the last time he would see Jane, Arna, and Grant together. The morning of January 26th, 1966, seemed normal. It was Australia Day, a national holiday celebrating Australian pride and history, similar to how September 7th is celebrated by Brazilians living abroad. As the heat rose, Nance did not hesitate when the children asked to go to the beach, a pastime that would keep them entertained and happy for a few hours, while giving her time to visit friends. She gave the kids 8 shillings and 6 pence in coins to buy a snack and let them head to the bus stop, just a few meters from their home, only a block away at the corner of Harding Street and Diagonal Road. What happened to the children in the following hours remains a complete mystery. What is known is based on witness accounts. Around noon, Nance waited for the children's return, having instructed them to take the noon bus home. She was surprised when she saw the bus stop and then leave without the children getting off. At first, she assumed they had missed the bus and might be walking back, or simply taking the next bus in an hour or two. She wasn't worried, as this had happened once or twice before. Today, we can see big differences from the past. Nowadays, it's unlikely that 3 small children would have such freedom. However, at that time, in a welcoming small Adelaide, such practices were not uncommon. Nance stayed home waiting for the children. But as time passed and the bus came and went without Jane, Arna, and Grant getting off, her worry grew. Meanwhile, Jean Beaumont, the father, received a call from Nance, who was already anxious about the children's whereabouts. Jean, who had not yet left Adelaide, decided to return home and arrived around 3 p.m. When he saw the children were not there, he and Nance went to the beach, trying to retrace the route the kids might have taken. They went back and forth for hours, searching without success. Desperate, the couple called the police around 7:30 p.m. after giving their statements. Jean went out looking for the children while Nell stayed home in case they returned. The next morning, police officially declared the Beaumont children missing and launched an investigation. Drowning was quickly ruled out, as none of the children's personal belongings were found on the beach, which would have been unlikely if they had been swept away by the tide. Investigators started gathering information about places the children had been and found eyewitnesses who saw them at or near the beach. They pieced together a timeline. Around 10:10 a.m. on January 26, 1966, witnesses, including the bus driver, saw the three siblings boarding. A woman noticed Jane, the oldest, holding a copy of the book Little Women, her favorite, and remarked that each child wore a different colored outfit, which lent credibility to her account. At 10:15 a.m., the bus departed, taking the children to Glenelg Beach, which they frequented regularly. Tom Peterson, the local mailman and known to the children, said he saw them around 11 a.m. walking toward Jervois Road Beach, about 10 blocks north of their home. Later, Tom corrected his statement, saying he actually saw the siblings in the early afternoon at Glenelg Beach. Around 11 a.m., an elderly woman at the Holdfast Sailing Club located by the seaside recalled seeing the three children playing on the grass at Collie Reserve, a nearby area that often attracts many children because of its park-like atmosphere. On that hot day, the sprinklers were turned on, cooling passers-by and providing fun for the children who got wet. The elderly woman reported noticing a young man wearing blue swim trunks watching the children. She and three other eyewitnesses described the man as slim, about 5 feet 11 inches, 1.80 meters tall, with blonde hair and light-colored eyes. He watched the siblings for a few minutes before approaching and talking to them. To this day, the man's identity remains unknown, though he is considered the prime suspect. There are rumors he may have befriended the children days or weeks before their disappearance, possibly being the boyfriend of Jane mentioned by Arna, but the truth was never clarified. After playing on the grass for about 15 minutes, the siblings walked toward the beach, followed by the man. Witnesses said they saw the children accompanied by an adult, but since it was a holiday, the beach was crowded, which made the situation less suspicious. One witness observed the man drying and dressing the children on the beach, and although he appeared to be familiar to them, the way he touched them and the slow manner in which he changed their clothes suggested inappropriate behavior. However, the children seemed relaxed and comfortable, smiling and talking with him. Lance, the children's father, believed Jane was too shy to feel at ease with a stranger helping her get dressed, which supports the theory that the man had prior contact with the siblings. Another witness said the man approached an elderly couple asking if they had seen someone messing with his clothes, claiming he had been robbed. Later, he walked toward the children, appearing as a friendly, non-suspicious figure. Another sighting of the siblings was reported at a local bakery called Wenzel, around 11:45 a.m. The children seemed to be accompanied by the man, which at the time did not raise alarm, as he could have been an older brother, uncle, or even their father. Some accounts indicate that around 12:15 p.m., the three children were seen alone at the Wenzel bakery. They went inside, bought some treats and a meat pie, paying with a £1 note. This raises some intriguing questions. First, why did the children buy a meat pie when, according to Nancy, none of her children liked that food, especially before lunch? Secondly, how did they get the money for the purchase, given that their mother said she had only given them 8 shillings and 6 pence in coins? The presence of a £1 note suggests the children received money from someone else, likely the strange man from the beach. They might have bought the pie for him, but the fact that they were seen alone in the bakery raises questions about where he was during that time. The truth remains unknown, but it is possible that if he had bad intentions, he would not want to be seen with the children for long, perhaps waiting outside or nearby. 2 reported sightings were investigated thoroughly by the police, but were eventually dismissed due to inconsistencies in the information. The first was from Tom Peterson, the local mailman, who initially claimed to have seen the children in the morning, but later changed his statement to say he saw them in the early afternoon. If he indeed saw them in the afternoon, this would align with other testimonies, suggesting the children might have missed the bus and were walking home. However, Tom was uncertain about the timing, which left a very broad window for the police to consider. Over the years, some amateur detectives pointed to Tom as a possible suspect, based on the inconsistencies in his statements, and one key fact. The Postal Service was not operating on Australia Day, a national holiday, but Tom claimed to be working that day. This raised suspicions since he should not have been on duty. Despite the apparent contradiction, Tom Peterson could have seen the children on an earlier occasion and simply confused the day of the events, as he often traveled the same route the children took to the beach. Thus, his testimony ended up confusing the timeline of events, and he was never formally considered a suspect by the police, with his statement dismissed as a possible date confusion. The second sighting, reported by a tourist from Broken Hill, was also dismissed by the police. This man, who was at Glenelg Beach, claimed to have seen 3 children accompanied by a man matching the description of the suspect in blue swim trunks, but with black hair instead of blonde. The discrepancy in hair color led the police to discard the report, assuming he might have just seen a father with his children, unrelated to the Beaumont brothers case. The children's disappearance attracted national attention, and Jean and Nance Beaumont, desperate, appeared on TV and radio on January 31st, 5 days after the disappearance, to appeal for information about their children. The police received hundreds of tips and investigated nearly all of them thoroughly, but, as expected, the leads ended in dead ends. The community panicked, with any child seen alone or any group of children accompanied by a man triggering calls to the police. This ultimately hindered the investigation, as officers spent days and nights searching for clues that could lead to the Beaumont brothers' whereabouts, without success. Everyone connected to the family was investigated, including neighbors, friends, co-workers, and acquaintances of Jean and Nance, but nothing concrete was found. The entire Adelaide region was on high alert, with the local population committed to finding any trace of the 3 children, searching everywhere possible. Sketches of the suspected man, described by witnesses as the individual in blue swim trunks, were drawn and released. A young blonde man living in the area was even taken to the police station, but was quickly ruled out as a suspect because he was participating in a soccer tournament on the day of the disappearance, with hundreds of people confirming his presence at the event. 2 weeks after the disappearance, a local newspaper received a strange call. A man with a foreign accent, likely British according to the receptionist, claimed to be holding Jane, Arna, and Grant Beaumont and demanded a ransom, saying, "I want to get some money for them, but it has to be a good amount worth it." Unfortunately, the call was disconnected before the receptionist could transfer it to the newspaper's chief. The police did not dismiss the call, but there are no records indicating they investigated it thoroughly. It was just one of several suspicious calls and prank calls the investigation faced. Search teams worked tirelessly for days, scouring nearby beaches, caves, coves, and streets leading to the beach, but nothing was found. Not even a piece of clothing or belonging of the children. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, with the searches gradually slowing down. 6 months after the disappearance, a new witness testimony caught the police's attention, bringing hope for new leads, although the searches had been fruitless until then. A woman claimed to have seen something unusual on the night of the children's disappearance, around 8 p.m. She reported that next to her home there was an abandoned house, and that she saw a man entering it carrying a small child in his arms, while 2 girls followed him. Hours later, she saw the boy leaving the house, looking dazed and sleepy, wandering aimlessly down the street until the man reappeared, took the boy, and led him back inside. The woman's testimony was questioned because she remained silent for months before reporting what she saw. One theory suggests she might have made up the story to attract attention, as her account seemed too convenient, especially considering the city was on high alert, and images of the children were everywhere in the news. If the report was true, her inaction would make her appear extremely indifferent to the gravity of the situation. Despite doubts, the police took her testimony seriously and searched the abandoned house but found no trace of the Beaumont brothers. In the following months, few useful leads emerged, and reports of suspicious sightings continued for at least a year after the disappearance. The parents began caring for their surviving children with greater intensity, and the case of the Beaumont brothers became a tragic example and a cautionary tale, similar to the bogeyman story that would be told later. In November 1966, Gerard Croiset, a 57-year-old Dutch medium, was invited to Australia. He claimed to have experience in parapsychology, a non-scientific field based on spirituality and paranormal beliefs. Gerard had worked with Dutch investigators after World War II and supposedly helped solve a murder case which gave him credibility in the Netherlands and some European countries. A wealthy businessman, Con Police, hired Gerard to try to solve the mystery of the Beaumont children's disappearance, believing in his abilities. Gerard Jan's arrival, once again, drew significant local media attention to the Beaumont children case, but not in the way the Beaumont couple wanted. They did not want Jan's services, as they viewed his alleged paranormal powers as a fraud. However, people were eager to hear what he had to say, turning the children's disappearance into a public spectacle and bringing the idea of psychic detectives into the spotlight. The police chose not to stop Gerard from continuing his investigations for the same reasons as the Beaumont parents. They believed he was a charlatan seeking fame and money by exploiting the situation. However, the public hoped that the medium might reveal clues leading to the case's resolution. Gerard went to Glen Elg Beach, where the children were last seen, and a large crowd followed him, eager for answers. Gerard made a bold claim, saying the children had not been kidnapped, but were instead murdered and buried under the floor of a newly constructed warehouse. He also stated he would find the children within 2 days. Skeptical of Gerard, the police were unwilling to mobilize resources to break the floor of a private building based solely on the word of a medium. However, the public raised over $40,000 to compensate the owner, allowing the excavation. Unsurprisingly, no trace of the Beaumont children was found, not even the slightest evidence suggesting they had ever been there. Gerard left Australia embarrassed and discredited after his brief and fruitless visit. 30 years later, in 1996, the disappearance of the Beaumont children once again gained worldwide notoriety, but this did not change the unsuccessful outcome of Gerard's claims. Curiosity about the case remained, but without new evidence or concrete solutions. In 1968, approximately 2 years after the Beaumont children's disappearance, the case was about to be closed by the police when a letter arrived by mail. The letter, which appeared to have been sent from Drogheda, a suburb of Melbourne, was supposedly written by Jane Beaumont, who would have been 11 years old at the time. The letter stated that the children were safe and under the care of a man who treated them well. The police and the children's parents believed the letter was authentic after comparing the handwriting to Jane's old schoolwork. The letter contained specific instructions for the father, saying he should wear a dark coat and white pants to be recognized by the man, and that the police should not be informed. A second letter, supposedly from the man caring for the children, stated that he was their guardian and was willing to return them at the place and time chosen by the parents, as long as the police were not involved. Despite the instructions, Jan Beaumont traveled more than 700 kilometers to Drogheda and waited for nearly 3 days. When the press reported Jan's wait to receive his children, the crowd grew and the police were called. No one showed up to return the children, and Jan returned home devastated. Shortly afterward, a third letter arrived, written in the same handwriting as the first, stating that the man had been in Drogheda during Jan's visit, but spotted an undercover police officer and left the area. The letter also said that the man felt betrayed and that he would now keep the children forever. Only 25 years later, when forensic testing became more common and accessible, was it possible to analyze the letters in more detail. However, to this day, the mystery of the Beaumont children's whereabouts and the authenticity of these letters remains unsolved. In 1973, 7 years after the Beaumont children disappeared, the case had become an urban legend, a story told by parents to warn about the dangers of going out alone. However, on August 25, 1973, during a soccer match at the large Adelaide Oval Stadium, a new mystery occurred. 2 families who knew each other and often met were sitting side by side. Among them were Joanne Redcliffe, 11 years old, and Christine Gordon, 4 years old. Christine needed to use the restroom, and since Joanne's parents allowed her to go alone, Christine's grandmother asked Joanne to accompany her granddaughter. The 2 girls went and returned without problems. Later, Christine told her grandmother she needed to use the restroom again. Joanne, having already offered before, took Christine with her. They left around 3:45 p.m. After several minutes without their return, the families began to worry and panic set in. While the game continued, Joanne's parents searched for them in the restrooms, and Christine's grandmother stayed in place in case they came back. Joanne's mother went to stadium management to request an announcement over the loudspeaker system, but the request was denied. The staff member claimed that the crowd noise would drown out the announcement, but Joanne's mother felt he did not want to interrupt the game. The lack of immediate action and the denial of the announcement contributed to the difficulty in locating the girls who mysteriously disappeared during the event. For about an hour, the Redcliffe couple desperately searched for Joanne and Christine throughout the Adelaide Oval Stadium, but to no avail. Only after this period was an announcement made over the stadium's sound system, and the girls were officially declared missing by the local police, who began a search of the area. However, nothing was found. The information collected by the police revealed a strange man seen with the girls, whose physical description and appearance were similar to those of the suspect in the Beaumont case 7 years earlier. Witnesses reported that the man was carrying Christine in his arms while Joanne tried to rescue her, with both seeming uncomfortable and scared. Christine was crying, and Joanne even kicked the man several times. Still, most people nearby, focused on the end of the game, did not intervene. The police believe the kidnapper took advantage of the confusion to take Christine while Joanne, resisting, followed him, continuing to kick and scream. Despite their efforts, the girls were never seen alive again. Years passed without any definitive conclusion for the Beaumont case or the kidnapping at Adelaide Oval Stadium, leaving the families involved with more questions than answers and a feeling of helplessness and sorrow. Over the following decades, no reliable witnesses or valuable evidence were found in the disappearance cases of the Beaumont and Redcliffe Gordon children. The investigation stalled, and the parents continued to live with the hope that if their children were still alive, they would come home.